Hey friends, welcome to the Dragonite tutorial part 1, and today we are going over the first parts of the collapse. Now before you get into this tutorial, you want to make sure that you pre-crease the crease pattern, and if you haven't checked out the introduction, definitely watch the introduction to see what you need to pre-crease and what you don't need to pre-crease, because there's a lot of hinges here that are completely unnecessary, and especially this one portion here, like this weird section, you don't have to pre-crease this diamond, it's a hinge, just this L unit here. But yeah, we're gonna dive in, and as you can see, I started to draw a little bit on the crease pattern, and I'm going to do this just to help you guys see which parts we're collapsing. However, normally I don't draw on the crease pattern, it keeps it a little cleaner. If you need to do this, that's totally fine if you're kind of new to crease patterns, but I recommend you don't. It's good practice to not have to draw in the creases. But hopefully it's just a nice learning tool. But yeah, let's jump into this tutorial. Alright, so we're going to be referencing the crease pattern a lot, obviously. So if you have that on hand, definitely hold it, even though you've pre-creased everything. So we're going to do the chest first, and there's all these level shifters, and they're pretty simple except for this one right here. But let's get to it. We're going to treat it like regular level shifters. So if you've taken the crease pattern class, you know how to do this. And step 1 is to fold in these horizontal pleats. Now on my some previous designs and other designs, these pleats go all the way through, but as you can see, we don't have that in this case because we shift the layers. Ignore that, and we're just going to treat it as folding all the way through for now. Also, you might notice there's some weird stuff going on here. Again, don't worry about it, just fold the pleats all the way through. I'm going to show you just how we're going to do that. So we're going to start from the bottom. Here's the first set of level shifters, and the orientation of this crease pattern is the same orientation I showed, where this is the legs, up top is the head. So we have this pleat folded down, and we're actually going to count up from this mountain fold 4 grid units to the next pleat here, and that's just because while this isn't a level shifter, we have this pleat, and it's a little bit easier to have this done beforehand. We're actually going to stretch it out so it gets a little wonky later, but it's not a level shifter, but you want to pleat it. So as you can see from our mountain crease, you go 4 units up into this mountain valley right here. So there's a pleat right here, and to make sure you do this right is between the pleats there should just be 2 units right there. Hopefully you can see that. Our next pleat comes from up here in this whole section, and again, this part isn't exactly on the crease pattern, but you're going to just follow what I do because this is how you fold. This is kind of a folding sequence for this more complex part. As you can see, we are folding 1 more across here, and if you don't know where these references are, it's just through the middle of these diamonds, right? That's our mountains. And you should get something like this. And our last set of pleats, at least horizontally, is right next to the top level shifter. And this is going to close off our chest. And this one is a mountain valley instead of a valley mountain. And as you can see, it creates a 2 grid unit tall, section right here. So that's how you can know that all of these are correct if you have this order. So we have a pleat, that's valley mountain on the bottom, 2 gridded units up is where the next mountain pleat touches, another 2 grid units, and then we have this 2 grid units here. So they're all within 2 grid units, so make sure you have that. After that, again, this is just general level shifter things. Our level shifters are sitting on this angle. So I'll show the crease pattern to show you what we're doing. And you see we have this long mountain crease, and it's 2 units from the middle on both sides. Now you might have to reverse this crease if you did a true accordion grid. And in our case, right, we can reference our level shifter here. That means we want our crease to be here, and again, you might have to reverse this crease. Normally it's a valley, so just take your time on that. And once you have that, again, 2 units because we shifted, or we're going to shift like this. And same thing on the left side. And again, if you guys don't understand what's going on here, if you've never seen this sequence, then you should really watch the level shifters tutorial on my Crease Pattern class. You can also check out a deep dive of level shifters in the Plant Psychologist design class. But I recommend you try out my exercises first before you do that if you've never seen these before. But yeah, this sequence is very general, so if you need to understand how this works. Alright, so we have the pleats down, and this basically gives us the general structure for our chest. So our chest is about these dimensions. We're going to start the level shifters. We're going to start with the bottom one, so this is the one closest towards the legs. And again, there's quite a few ways to do this, and hopefully you're going to understand these methods, but because again, if you've never seen these before, then you're going to want to have seen it. But we're going to flip it around, and I'm going to do the method where I'm pushing in through the back side to get these level shifters. And this is a technique I mainly showed in the most recent class 6 of the Crease Pattern class. So if you're not familiar with that, just do these level shifters your normal way. And I'm doing it this way because I pre-crease these level shifters in the correct direction. A lot of times, if you're lazy, you don't have to pre-crease these if you know how to do them. Or you can pre-crease them just, mountain, whatever the easiest way to crease it for you is. But in this case, I do recommend creasing them the correct direction just because the paper that's required for this is a little bit thinner and maybe softer, so it'll just make it overall a cleaner job if you crease them the right directions. Alright, so we have that bottom section, and we're going to do the same thing on the very top. I'm just going to show that very quickly. Again, it's the same process, and a deep analysis of this process is, I've made videos on that already. So once again, this is the back side. We can just revert our grid, right? And then just push where we can see some of the creases. And I don't know if the camera's picking up, but at least on my end, I can kind of see the pencil marks I made earlier. But if there's no pencil marks, you should be able to see your creases, right? And then that's going to give you your level shifter. Very easy to maneuver. Just like this. Fold down. Do the same thing on the other side right here. And make sure we're not unfolding our bottom ones from the legs. So I'm going to finish this off. I'm showing this live just so you guys can see that these parts really aren't that difficult. And if you are finding this difficult, then again, this tutorial might be a little bit outside of your level, but I do have individual tutorials on these units. So definitely look into that before you try it. Again, this is not an easy model. It's okay if you can't fold it yet, but get yourself practiced to prepare for it, because you want to be ready to fold this. Because generally, if you're fully ready to fold this, then you will be ready to shape it as well. Because the shaping is arguably the harder part of this model than folding it. But there we are with our first set of level shifters collapsed. Alright, so now we are on to arguably the hard part of this model. I guess one of the hard parts. And that's just because this level shifter is a little bit tricky. Before we do that, right, if we count our layers, we just have this double layer next to the level shifters, which are 2 pleats flat. However, to do this next sequence, I advise folding in at least 1 or 2 more pleats on the side. So what I mean by that, see, we have our units here. Just fold in a couple more. And this just makes keeping this form a little bit easier, as well as it gives us access to change up this pleat. Again, we're not really going to worry about this yet. We're going to do this section, and then we'll worry about this section later. So yeah, fold in. I'm just going to fold in 1 pleat each on each side, and that should be enough to do this middle section. Just like this. So now if we open up the side, you can see we have some pleats here, and that's going to allow us to work in there. So this next section is going to be a little bit difficult just because it's hard to explain and it's a little bit fidgety. If you go with crease patterns, you can go for it. But basically what we're doing is we're elongating this flap with another level shifter that just kind of juts outward. So it's going to be 2 or 3 units length along here, even though it's 2 grid units here. And the concept of that is obviously you have to take paper from where you start, and that's going to come from these split layers underneath. So if we kind of go through our layers here, you can see we have those, and then underneath this pleat we have another set that's over here. And again, it's kind of hard to see, but this one we are going to have as all mountains, and that's going to push this pocket out. So again, we're going to be unfolding a little bit, which is why we did all these pleats. So definitely try to make sure you have all your pleats handy like this. If it helps, you can maybe take a small clip and just clip this in place for a little bit. But I think we might be able to start off in the back. If I flip it around, we have to push this, one of these flaps out. And now that I'm thinking about it, it might be easier actually just from this side. I'm gonna do my best to show this, but if I open up this flap, right, it's mountain, valley, mountain. And I guess another valley on the bottom. We're gonna ignore that one. We're just worried about this first mountain over here. And we're gonna have to undo some of these pleats a little bit. So I guess to make it easier, I'm just going to undo a little bit like that. I don't want to undo everything. I want it still to be kind of collapsed. And I'm just going to push this forward and start creasing along these mountains for our level shifters here. So as you can see, there's more mountains here, and it's going to pull this way. And again, while you're doing this, you want to make sure that the rest of your model stays collapsed, so that it doesn't fully undo itself, because to fully do this, you're going to need your model to be flattened. Otherwise, it's not quite going to work out. So you're going to be very careful here. As you can see, I'm just slowly going about this. And when we get to around this section, it's going to look awfully strange. Like, how is this able to mount in? But again, that's why if you crease it the correct direction the first time, it's going to make it a little bit easier. These are kind of going to sit underneath this layer on the bottom, which makes it a little bit difficult. And as our pleats are collapsed this way, we're actually going to use them to split across to kind of spread this layer out. And so what I mean is, right now we're not fully creased. I'm going to try to get this pleat like this. So we're just work on one side at a time, right? Over here on our crease pattern, we can see that most of these are valley, but we have a hinge that goes mountain on the other side. And so what that's going to look like is this flap. It's actually going to fold out like this. And along this V, we have a mountain and then a valley. So it's going to shift like so. I'm going to fold it like this. And then I'm going to reinstate this pleat here, like that. You kind of see how that transition works. And we are started up here, just like so. You kind of see where we're going. And then when we open here, as you can see right now, this is this connection unit right here is a mountain fold. However, if you look on the crease pattern, it's actually a valley fold. So this tip right here, instead of it pushing up and out, we kind of want it to push in, right? So we want to push that in, and you can kind of do that by forcing a mountain fold here, like that. And you can do the same thing on the other side. And we want in the middle of this specific unit to be a valley. So we can close off just very carefully, just this unit like this. And that's how we're starting to get that unit. And if you can look closely, if I start to close up these pleats, we're almost there. Right, we're not quite, but we're getting very, very close. Alright, so I'm going to point out another thing on the crease pattern, small detail, and this is why some of these hinges are really important, is this is the level shifter we've been working on. Right underneath it, it is mounted all the way down, which means that the hinges for this bottom pleat, which normally will stay valley all the way across, you see how it changes. So what that means is, currently, if I hold this up, you see how this layer is stuck and this pleat is sitting on top of it? We want to undo that. So I'm just going to pull it out a little bit, and that way I can complete the mountain right there, right? And this will actually sit a little bit better when I start closing this. But again, we have the same issue where these lines right here, these are currently mounted, but they need to be valley. So we're actually going to push this in, and that lets this pleat close. And I can actually hold this whole pleat, and it's really starting to lay flat. And then from here, we close our original pleats on this side. They swivel outwards in the same manner. Open up like this. And we need this bottom pleat to recollapse like this in order for it to fully lay flat. And it's going to be really hard to see from this angle. But basically what I'm doing is I'm pushing these two units very deep so that their creases align. Because that's ultimately what's going to allow this to lay flat. We have a small flap over here. This will go one way or the other. It doesn't really matter which way you put it, but it's got to lie flat somewhere. So hold that flat and push in the respective pleats. And it will lie flat. There you go. I know that was a little bit confusing, and again, you're gonna have to fidget with it. But we have one side done. If I open this up, so it took me a little bit, as you can see there, to really push all these creases into place. When I open it up, you can kind of see how these points come together in the middle after I pushed everything in. And then, again, we have to align along our original bottom valley fold for the pleat, and it will align something like that. Once we have one side done, it makes it a lot easier to do the other side. So I'm going to kind of walk through again how to do this other side. And then we'll be done with like the hard part. For those who already know crease patterns, feel free to just try this. Really observe the crease pattern because it's very, very important in terms of the layering so that you don't have to mush through any unnecessary layers, and also so you have enough space. Because really the reason why we did this is, as you can see, it's 2 units long on this hinge, and that's going to be important for how we shape this later. All right, so I'm going to flip it to this side. And again, don't forget that your pleats are here. You really want to remember where they are. So as you can see, mine are pretty undone because of what we did on the other side. So I'm going to fix our original level shifters just a little bit, like this. And this bottom side as well is okay. And then we have our other pleats, our extra pleats on this side. All right, and then the first thing we want to do is we started to pull this mountain, but we have 2 flaps, right? One here, one here. There's like one on this side and then 2 on this side. We're going to flip one of these like this, and I'm going to open it all the way up to the top where you have some creases here. And we're getting to the position where, see, we have this mountain. This needs to be a valley. I'm going to push it through. And a lot of this is I'm working with one hand on the underside of the paper and one hand on the top side. And this is so I can start to get this mountain fold. There you go. And to get the second mountain fold, we have our pleat along here. We need to pull this pleats open, right? And be very careful when you do this. That way we have this long mountain fold all the way up to this section, which once again, we want to fold all mountain for this valley, or sorry, for this level shifter, and valley straight through the middle, like this. And I'm just folding it like this to get some tension on it, so that's a little bit easier to fold as we go. And from here, we want to fix the mountains and valleys. So as you can see, actually, when I did this, it converted these into valleys. Right, now we're going to want to take our bottom pleat and start to fold it because we are going to need to fix these sides of the pleat. And so I'm pushing this corner down so that these are all valley, pushing the mountains in so they're valley like this. And then as I can fold my pleat, and since we have both sides, it's going to stay a little bit better together, but it's going to overlap like this. And as you can see, it's kind of shifted here. You want to make sure this is fully in. We don't want any paper creep. As much as you can. And the transitions are going to help us out to work into our full model. And now we have this unit done on both sides, just like this. And what you should be left with is 3 units up here, right? 3 with this diagonal tip here. And underneath we have a hinge where it's 2 flaps long. And I know that was kind of complex for what we got, but again, this is part of the shaping and how we're going to make the dragon head as part of the body armor. So really try to get that. It's a little bit confusing. Work the crease pattern a ton. And the reason why we did this first is because If you do this later on and you have to unfold everything, it's going to be extra hard. But yeah, hopefully that kind of made sense to people. I'm going to show a couple shots of just like, I'm going to slightly open it so you guys can see, but really pay attention to all the creases here. All the hinges are correct on this crease pattern. It's flat folding. I tested it. I put in the computer. These are the correct folds. So if you follow this, you just have to learn how they squeeze together and fold flat. All right, so we're gonna just take a couple seconds here to show the cross section of these units. And again, this extra pleat that we did, right before we started it, is very important. You're not able to fold this unit without it. Because actually you can kind of see it's very locked because of this pleat. It's the only reason why it's able to lay flat, because of these transitions with the layers. But yeah, if I slightly pull this part, right, and I have to do it all at once with all these pleats, you can see that these pleats are interlocked. You have all these creases tucked in to the middle with the level shifter on the outside, pushing in, and it almost spread squashes, but inside this layer, right? And you can even see that I can clean this up even more because I had some paper creep. But now that everything is mostly collapsed already, it's a little bit easier to fidget with. I can make this part a little bit cleaner so that the pleat is cleaner itself. There you go. Yeah, the nice thing about that unit is it locks in this part completely so that if you get it collapsed, it shouldn't undo itself. And it's very nice. All right, so we have just completed that first chest unit, and what we're gonna work on next is this middle pleat right here. So on the crease pattern, it's this one. And if we take a look at our model currently, this middle pleat, right now it's locked. It's locked in between. We're going to unlock it, and it's similar to the last step to unlock this. It's actually the same unit, but it's a lot easier because we're not level shifting at the same time. As you can see, we have our extra pleat on the bottom here, right here. Again, this is needed for this specific unit, so make sure you have that. Well, if you did the top part, it has to be collapsed, but we're relying on that a lot. And I'm gonna start with the left side. And again, it's locked this way, right? It's not like this flap that can open and close, but we want to turn it into a flap that opens and closes. So all you're gonna do, right, is gently open this flap. I'm just pulling the length so it's untrapped like this. And in order to collapse it down, right, what we're basically doing is we're changing which is the hinge. So if I show the crease pattern, right, if we look at our normal crease pattern or our normal level shifter, right, normally the pleats are all full and then the vertical lines are the hinges. But for this case, the horizontal lines turn into the hinges, so that this single vertical line can be complete. And so what that means is underneath, right, once I pulled this is the whole unit. You want to be very careful because you don't want to tear it on accident. There you go, there's the full unit. Right where this secondary pleat is where we can actually have a little unit. And what's a little bit easier to do is, see how there's mountains on both sides? I'm actually going to push this open like that, and it's going to push in about 1 unit this way. And if you notice, when we do that, we start to get a twist right here. And that's exactly what we want. And you can kind of collapse down this a little bit, and it's going to be this funky unit in the middle between these pleats that's going to fold down right in the center and allow this flap to open freely. So I'm going to do that one more time on the other side, but I just want to show you kind of the cross section of what this looks like, right? And if we were to unfold this unit, this is the transition unit. If we were to unfold it and look at what it looks like on the crease pattern, it would be this diamond right here. So for those who really enjoy looking at the crease pattern to identify hinges, that is the case. And so on the other side, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to untrap this layer a little bit just by pulling the layers. And then about 1 unit in, I'm going to push on the undersides to make it mountain. Right? And I'm going to recollapse the pleat. And it's going to start to it's going to naturally collapse that transition unit. You just want to make sure it's far enough and clean enough. It's super inside the paper, so if it's a little bit unclean, that's okay. What's important is that this pleat is clean. So now we have a freed up pleat like this. I can open and close it. It's 1 unit long, right underneath our 2 unit pleat here. There you go. And this is going to form the mouth and some of the teeth of our dragon armor. But that was it for the chest. And yes, that was quite a lot for the chest, but just these 3 pleats are gonna able to add a lot of detail into our final model. So if you made it this far, great job. This is one of the hardest sections of this model. The rest is fairly easy. In terms of this part of the tutorial, all we're gonna do is collapse the legs, which is very, very easy. And that's gonna be it for the tutorial. So let's just do the legs really quickly and I'll explain what's going to go on in the future. Alright, so we're going to do the legs. Legs are simple. If you look at the crease pattern, all it is a Elias stretch. Right? It's a very simple Elias stretch all the way across. No weird fancy stuff, it's just 45-degree Elias stretch. But what this is basically going to do is it's going to complete all these pleats. So we're going to get a long stick, basically. So the first thing I like to do when I do this is I'm just going to complete all these vertical pleats together, and then I'm going to do the Elias stretch. Just because collapsing the pleats make it a little bit easier to do this is like the real Elias stretch kind of methodology to do these. So like if this was in a diagram, this is what you would see is it's all collapsed up, and then we're going to stretch out these layers. And it's basically a glorified reverse fold, or then that's like sync folded a ton of times, but again, it's nothing actually that complicated. It's just an Elias stretch. So as you can see, this is part of what makes it asymmetrical, is that the chest is shifted a little bit towards the right side of the model. So you're going to have less pleats on this side and more pleats on the left side. So go ahead and fold that. I'm doing this very quickly. I'm just going to keep playing it with the tutorial so that you guys have time. You don't have to really pause the video much to do this. I'm working with you guys. Alright, so on this side we just have a couple layers left. And yeah, we're basically just folding it like a fan. It's all the way across. And again, if your paper is not, being super nice, you can use like a closing pin or some kind of soft clip to hold these together for now before we work on it. Because yeah, when you just pleat things like this, it's going to get a little thick, especially where we did the level shifter pleats, which don't worry, we are going to handle these layers. So it's not going to be as thick, like it's bunching up here, right? So if you want, you can grab your trusty old pin, like these, right? So let's just grab 2 for now. We can clip it in place. You just want to be careful not to hurt the paper. So actually, generally, I don't like to clip where things are going to be seen, so I'll clip like the neck. Because if it leaves a mark, then you won't see it when we finish the model. And then we're going to go to the other side and just fold along the grid for all these pleats. And this is vertical pleats. So please make sure you're pleating the correct direction. Don't get lost. And hopefully I am matching your guys' pace a little bit. I'm not the fastest folder. I don't fold that fast, but since I've done this a lot, maybe it seems fast, but I think that if I do this, I'm going to be matching your pace through the tutorial. This part is kind of like the relaxing part. It's kind of like the reward for doing the hard part, is that we really get to see, like after you do the chest armor, the model's going to start to take form. It's going to shrink into its official size. And we'll be good from there. And this model, it shrinks a little bit. Actually, not too much. It shrinks, obviously, like dimensionally, but lengthwise, because it is a taller model, we have this whole space for the chest, and then this is how long the legs are. You can kind of start to see how tall your model is going to be when it's all done. This model is a little bit of a thinner model, skinny-wise, even though we have a 4-unit base, but a lot of that's going to be shaped out. I think that looks a little bit more proper for this kind of knight, because I guess like the story behind him is, you know, he's hunting dragons, so it's like an adventure. He's not, you know, living a comfortable life. He's actively, you know, adventuring all the time, so it's pretty built that way, or wiry, I imagine. Alright, so we are like this, and I'm going to clip all these layers together on the top of the armor, so then we can work on the legs, the ally stretches on the legs. And here, right, I'm just going to start from this corner, just because, again, it's corner, it's so easy just to go up, down, up, down, up, down, and form this ally stretch. This shouldn't really need like a tutorial part, right? You should be able to do this on your own, but I'm going to walk through it with you guys just in case. But we're just going to start, like, you can kind of see our pleats are divided. I'm just going to start on this side. And actually this pleats can go all the way across till the next point for the ally stretch. And this is the stretching part, right? We're stretching it out. And where's our diagonal pre-crease? Right here, right here, all the way up to here. This is our ally stretch. This is a really long stretch, right? It's like 30 something units long, but that's what we get. So we have long enough legs, or plenty enough details, and also this is going to make the waistcoat of our armor, which is a really fun part to shape. So I'm excited about that. It is a feature that was kind of on the original Dragon Slayer, the knight part of the Dragon Slayer, which I took over to this side, but I made it a little bit longer so it's more pronounced. That way it looks a little bit better too. Again, just a regular ally stretch. We're just going, we're going. We have a dip over here, so technically we can just fold up all the way through all these horizontal pleats, right, until we find our other set of diagonals. So we're still going. And again, if you pre-crease this, you're going to know where it is. You probably can't see it on my paper because the paper is just too thin. There's no marks. But again, just refer to your crease pattern if you get lost, or your creases, and we'll be good to go from there. Now, what's going to happen is as we get close to these layers up top where the pleats have been done, you're going to find that you might be folding through some layers. So when I get really close to this, I will show you guys what I mean. Okay, so we're almost to the top, right? And then it drops back down. And we see we have a layer that's just chilling up here. And we're going to have to fold through it, right? Now that gets fairly thick, right? So this layer, we're going to be folding through it. And that's not on the crease pattern. For now, just fold through it. So like what I'm going to show right here, just fold through like this. We're going to take care of that in the next part of the tutorial, where we're taking all these pleats and bringing them all together. So just don't worry about that for now. Just fold through it, even though that's not on the crease pattern. And then just complete this ally stretch as you would normally. Right, so like that, and then we're gonna have one on the other side too. Let's see, does this go one more unit? this way. And then it goes back up. And since we're in the middle, I'm just going to do the other side. And then it'll all come together very nicely. I'm going to fold up here. Pleats and pleats and pleats. And once again, we're going to have to fold through this layer right here. And yeah, don't worry. It's going to feel very thick from now, but we are fixing all that. The next part, when we work more on the pleat arrangements. This model, in terms of efficiency, I actually think I use, a good portion of the paper very well, even though the base has a lot of layers that are on top of each other. We use a lot of those layers, or for what it could be, the layers are pretty well distributed. So as long as you're using anywhere around 30 GSM paper, you'll be fine. But after that, we still use the paper very well. A lot of the pleats will be shown for different parts of the model, or they add details or are used for thickness and the shaping. But yeah, there you go. There we have our collapsed legs. Just like that. We have a little hinge here. That's what the diamonds running down the crease pattern are. That should be very familiar as well. So I'm going to clip this into place like this. So now we can kind of clip the legs together. We might need to use 2 clips because this clip's a little too small. But as you notice on this side, right, we have a little bit of an extra bit right here. This kind of just folds out of the way. It's like extra paper. Technically, you could just valley fold this corner all the way in, but we're not really going to use it, but it's okay. So you just collapse it up there to finish it off. And it doesn't really do anything. It's just I guess that part is wasted paper. But that's kind of the only wasted paper, but low-key it adds dimension when we actually shape the legs. So yeah, I'm just going to clip this into place, just like this. We can kind of show off what we have so far. Oops, I went a little bit too far. There we go. Just like that. And this is what we should have so far from this part of the tutorial. Again, if you guys made it this far, definitely be proud of yourselves. Good job for sticking with it. We've done, on our crease pattern, we've done this whole middle section, and we did the legs. So yeah, great job. Give yourselves a round of applause. And get ready for part 2 of this tutorial, which will be basically this section. We're kind of, now that we did the middle, the plan is going bottom up. And that's generally the easier way to collapse this. Because the head, it's easier when things are already collapsed when you do the head. So then it can all come together and we'll have our nice base. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to drop questions. Again, if you get stuck, it might mean that this model is a little bit too hard at the moment. So definitely keep practicing origami and learning your crease patterns and learning these hard structures. If there's something that really gets you stuck, just, do one, right? So you can split in half and do like an 8x8 grid just to practice it. That would be what I recommend if you can't figure it out. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you're following along. Drop a like for this series. It's not easy to make tutorials of this kind of complexity, but I am still very, very excited to bring this to you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.
All this origami, all this origami, all this origami got me going kamikaze now.